So here we are for our weekly reading, and I wonder if you remember an Old Testament story in the Exodus. God's people are enslaved in Egypt, they're oppressed, they're treated cruelly, and their spirits are crushed. But God says, "Let my people be free." And after a long story, they become free. And I think there's overtones of that in the story we're about to hear from John's Gospel. It's John chapter 5, beginning at verse 1. Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Aramaic Bethesda. It's surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie: the lame, the blind, the paralysed. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned he'd been in that condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured. He picked up his mat and he walked. Now the day on which this took place was the Sabbath. So the man's been an invalid. He's probably been lame for 38 years. I expect something happened in his childhood. And as a result of that, for the rest of his life, he's been unable to walk. And that's a long time. He's by the pool, and with the pool, the rumour was that if the waters were stirred up, the first person in got healed. And for this man, he's never made it. Someone's always beaten him to it. And after 38 years, I reckon his hope is pretty crushed. And he just exists. And for Jesus, he looks and he sees this man. And he knows how long he's been there. And he can see in his spirit the man is low, without hope. He says, "Do you want to get well?" And the man gives an excuse. Can't even bring himself to say yes. And Jesus says, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." And I just wonder how the man felt, feeling the strength, the feelings return to his legs, to his ankles. And once more he's able to get up after 38 years and walk again. And he picks up his mat and off he goes. And the day that he's healed on is a Sabbath. So thinking back to that story in Exodus, the people of God were oppressed by slavery and God said, "They shall be free." This man is oppressed by the illness that he has. He's oppressed, he's lost hope. Other people get to pool first, 38 long years. And Jesus says, "You shall be free. You shall be healed." And he begins a new life. His community are those people who've been sick. He's no longer sick. He's not one of them. Previously, he was probably a beggar, and now he's able-bodied. He can work for a living. He can start a new life. Well, that's a wonderful story about how Jesus gave someone a fresh start. But it's a sign. The healing's a sign. What does it point towards? The day on which this took place was a Sabbath. That has implications. Let me read on a bit further in the chapter, verse 16. Because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jewish leaders began to persecute him. You see, you weren't allowed to work on the Sabbath. That was against the Jewish law. And the Jewish leaders saw healing as work. So rather than say, "A wonderful thing has taken place, this man has been healed after 38 years, they say, "Jesus shouldn't be doing this. It's the Sabbath." In his defence, Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at work to this very day, and I too am working." For this reason they tried all the more to kill him, not only because he was breaking the Sabbath, but because he was calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Jesus gave them this answer. He said, "Very truly I tell you, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does." The Father wasn't content to leave the people of Israel in slavery. They had to be free. And Jesus is following that. He's doing what the Father does. He's releasing this man from his oppression and from his illness. And the man walks a free man. And the Jewish leaders, they see the implications of this. And they see that Jesus is not only working on the Sabbath, but by doing that, he's making himself equal to his Father. And they said, "This is blasphemy. He needs to die." Well, we're left with the same choice they had. They saw what Jesus did. And they saw that what he was doing, what he was saying, was making them equal to the Father. And we're left with that choice. Jesus, he's more than a good teacher. He's more than a great wise man. He's more than a prophet speaking God's words. He's the Son of God himself, making himself equal with God. And that's the person who we come before today. The sign of this healing, a man who's been healed after 38 years of sickness, points towards the Son of God. And for us, we're faced with the same choice. Jesus, the Son of God, do we accept him or do we reject him? Let's pray. Father, you give these stories, these signs to show us who Jesus is. And we will pray this day, Lord, that we turn to him as the Son of God, doing the Father's will. And we dare to pray, Lord, he will do his will in our lives, as he did with that man so many years ago. Let that be so, for we ask it in the name of Jesus. Amen.